Now let's continue to work on the chair by working on the seat. Alright, so we need a seat to go inside here. So let's use a cylinder to begin with. So I'm going to go to the top view, go to create, and let's create a standard primitive cylinder. And I'll just kind of draw this out. And you just want to kind of fit it inside there and create a thickness, something like that. You can go ahead and move this up if you want to. Somewhere around there. Okay, and maybe back a little bit. Now let's take a look at the resolution here. So in the modify panel, you'll see right now I've got it set to 8 sides. Okay, so I'm looking at the back end of this basically, and I think that looks pretty good. I want it to be low enough that I can go ahead and smooth it, but high enough where I can get kind of a nice curve in there. So I find that 8 is usually a pretty good number. Go ahead and just scale this down a little bit. You can also change the parameters in there if you want to do that. Alright, now let's go. I've got, let's see, 3 segments on the height, 3 segments along the cap. And so I think that's going to work just fine for us. So let me go ahead and now convert this to an editable poly. Okay, and now I want to select basically these 3 edges right here. Select the loop, and now hold down Control and hit backspace, and we'll just delete those. Okay, now what I want to do is grab these polygons here, and let's go ahead and extrude those out. And I'm going to extrude them out basically to the front of the chair. So kind of right in there, something like that. Okay, we can take this whole thing and maybe scale it in just a little bit. And now we need to connect this geometry up. So I'm going to go ahead and select these edges, select the ring, and that'll select this edge up here as well. And now we'll go to connect, and we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges. So we'll go ahead and up the segments to 5. We'll say OK to that. Now we need to come in here and merge some of these vertices and get rid of some of these vertices that are stray. So I'll go ahead and any of these kind of vertices in here, I can go ahead and get rid of those. Okay, do the same thing underneath here. If I've got some strays floating about, go ahead and just get rid of those. And then we can come in and actually start welding some of these vertices together. So if I select these 2, you can see that it says I have 2 vertices selected, so I'll just weld those. Same thing over here. That one's fine. We go ahead and select these 2. There's actually 4, so you can tell I've got more than 2 here. Just want to make sure that I'm only using these. That's fine. Go ahead and weld those together. These 2, weld those, and let's go across here and weld all of these vertices together. Okay, and then you've got these 4 because of all the lines coming in. Go ahead and weld those, and I think one more. Go ahead and weld those together, and that'll give you something that looks like that. Now just to kind of clean things up a little bit, I'm going to go in and actually delete, rather with our backspace, get rid of those edges there and there. That'll give us kind of a nice 4-sided piece of geometry there. Now I want to maintain this sort of round shape back here, so I'm going to add a little bit of resolution along these edges. So we'll just do connect, and I don't want to add that many. Okay, maybe something like that, and let's go ahead and pinch that out. And I don't want to bring this too close to this edge because I want it to be kind of nice and soft. So we can slide this around until we get kind of the spacing that we want. We'll say OK to that. Okay. All right. So now that we have the seat built, the next thing that we want to do is something very similar to what we did with the couch, and that is to kind of smooth this out, create kind of a look of upholstery, create some seams along here, much like we did with the couch. And so the first thing I'm going to do, I've got these lines laid out pretty much how I want to, because I want this to retain a little bit of softness. I don't want it to be super hard. I want it to look a little bit soft, like you could actually sit on this. So I'm going to go ahead and now with the editable poly selected, I'm going to go down and add just a turbo smooth to this. All right, and then I need to edit these polys, so I'm going to add an edit poly modifier. And now the first thing that I want to do is up here on the front, I want this line to flow around the front. I don't want it to flow around this way. So I'm not going to change any topology, but what I am going to do is just select some of these edges, basically these guys right here. Okay, we go ahead and select these, and I'm just going to kind of move these over a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to select these polygons, these vertices, and just move those so that it creates kind of visually a line that goes around that way. Same thing over here. I'm going to go ahead and take these edges, okay, and kind of move these in here, and then I'll take this vertex and move it out. And again, it kind of helps that we're building this sort of real world stuff, so you don't have to be exact. In fact, it'll help if you're not, if things aren't the same on both sides. All right, so now what we want to do is actually the same thing we did before as far as making those seams. So we'll select this edge and we'll select the loop. Okay, do the same thing underneath here. Select that loop. Okay, and now let's select this guy and that loop and then this one. So that is the selection that we ended up with. So around the ends and then around the front there. Okay, and then we'll go down to our edit edges, chamfer those, take the amount down quite a bit. Okay, say okay to that. We'll convert that selection. Okay, so shift click on polygon, and then let's go ahead and inset that just a very small amount, something like that, and then extrude along normal, a very small amount as well. Okay, so something like that. Okay, and then we can add another smooth on top of there if we want to. Make that even smoother. And then you can see those seams. Okay, right in there. You can up the iterations if you want to make that really smooth. Okay, and again, same process. We can come into the edit poly in here and actually use our paint deformation. Okay, so we can come down here to our paint deformation rollout, change our push-pull value, maybe something like half. Take our brush size down to maybe 8 inches or so. Maybe get kind of a lower brush strength, and then we can come in here and push-pull. Okay, and you can kind of come in and rough this up a little bit. Maybe if you want to dial that strength up a little bit more. That's a little bit too much. Keep that down to something lower. But you can come in here and just kind of mess this up a little bit underneath even as well. Okay, so you can kind of see that in there. Let's do the same thing over on this side, only let's dial our brush size down quite a bit. Maybe by half. And then we can come in and kind of just sculpt along here and just create. If you don't have enough resolution in here, you could always add another layer on top of this. But I think that's going to work. We just want to kind of bump it up a little bit. If you want any sort of finer sculpted detail, you might want to add another edit poly on top of the turbo smooth there. Okay, so we want to do the same thing with the sides, with these guys. All right, so again, we'll go ahead and just smooth this, adding our turbo smooth there. Okay, let's go ahead and add an edit poly modifier. And then we'll select these edges. Let's select these right here. And we'll go ahead under selection and select the loop. And then on the outside as well, select that loop. Go ahead and chamfer those. Just a very small amount. So something like that. Okay to that. Let's go ahead and shift. Click on our little polygon to convert the selection. And now again, go ahead and inset that a very small amount. Something like that, and then extrude that and we'll extrude along local normal up to about 3/32 or so. All right. And again, we can add another smooth on top of that if we want to. And take a look at what that looks like. And you probably want to come in and do a little bit of sculpting on here as well. Okay. So we can come in with our, again, paint deformation, push pull. Let's change the values down to something similar to what we've been using, about half. And then our brush size, let's go ahead and dial that down to maybe, let's make this about 4 or 5 inches, I think. Brush size, or brush strength rather, about 1/4 strength or so. Okay, and then we'll push pull, and we'll just come in here and sculpt along here. Okay, just kind of rough this up a little bit, just so that you get a little bit of, you know, it's not completely straight and gives the indication that it's, you know, vinyl or whatever it is. Some sort of a upholstered look here. Okay, so that gives you something like that. You get some nice little effects in there, and in here you might want to come across in here rather than just going down this way. You might want to go ahead and, you know, come across here and make some different little indentations there. All right, and then we can smooth that again and see what that looks like. Now what we need to do is add the back leg here. And this is going to be very simple. I'm just going to go in and create a cylinder, just a very small cylinder. Turn off auto grid, and let's go ahead and create it right at the back point of the of this guy. Actually, we'll move it. I want to create it a little bit farther forward. Let's go to the cylinder, create it right in there, create a little bit of a height. Let's go ahead and move it kind of right in that spot in there. Go ahead and move it up into the seat. Okay, and I'm going to change the values here. So I'm going to reduce the number of segments along the height, and that will allow me to go ahead and convert this to an editable poly. Grab these vertices now and just move these down to the floor and back. And let's go ahead and scale these down quite a bit. Okay, so you end up with something like that. If you don't want this to be round, maybe you want to create kind of a different effect there, and come in, kind of scale that in a little bit if you want to do that. Now let's go ahead and select these edges. All right, and let's use connect to add a little bit more resolution in there. So we'll add a little bit of resolution now that we've got that deformed the way that we want to. Let's go ahead and also add some down here. Let's just add one. Let's add a couple. Pinch those together and slide them down. I really like this connect tool because you can really get some flexibility as far as where you want to put your edges very quickly. Okay, and now we can go ahead and let's go ahead and select basically these polygons here all the way around, and let's go ahead and do an extrude along local normal. And our normals aren't really working for us, so I'm going to go ahead and just pull that down and undo that. So I'm going to give this a little bit of an inset first, something kind of like that, and then we'll extrude that. Just give it a little bit of a surface out there. We can kind of rotate that if we need to, just to give it something down there at the bottom. Okay, and then we can always go ahead and just look at that as a smooth item there. All right, so there we go with our chair. We can go ahead and you can see there's a space in there, so we can take this piece here and just kind of move it over and scale it so that we want the sides to be kind of penetrating into the arms there. Make sure of that. Okay, and then we can go ahead and group that together if we want to. So select all of these pieces, including the little pieces at the bottom, and we'll go ahead and group that and call call that chair. Say OK to that. Now let's go ahead and move this into position here. And we can scale it appropriately, so it's a little bit large right now. So we'll go ahead and kind of scale this down a bit. And then we can kind of place this near our fireplace. So drop it down to the floor. Okay, our leg's a little bit too long here, as we can see. All right, so it doesn't quite match up. So we can go ahead and just open that group. And that will allow us to kind of manipulate this guy. And we'll go ahead and just scale him down a little bit. And move him up. And then we can close that group back together. Okay, and then we can get this one in place, and then we'll just copy one over here. So rotate this around. So maybe something like that. All right. So now that we have the chairs created, the next thing that we want to do is add some pillows to the chairs. So just some little accent pillows to the chairs here, and we can also add those to the couch itself. Okay, just for add a little bit of realism, a little bit of detail. So we'll go ahead and look at how we can create those in the next lesson.